All right, we're here off a bong rip, espresso, and a Zin, ready to go. I basically levitate every morning. I'm on substances, I'm on chemicals, and I'm fired the fuck up. Welcome to Requiem for a Tuesday. I forgot this was a show. I was just kind of doing a thing, little inner monologue, outer, whatever. Adam Pecora here. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you're doing well. We're doing the weird schedule thing. So if you're listening to this when it came out, this won't matter at all in the future. But we're here recording on a Sunday morning, dropping on a Sunday morning. Next week, I do kind of want another early episode, like a New Year's Eve type thing, or like to avoid New Year's Eve, because that would be the Tuesday. But your boy got to go out of town the weekend before, so we'll see. If anything, the episode next week will just drop on time. But there will be one. It'll be too much to talk about with Bob Dylan and Nosferatu coming out. Seeing those back-to-back days, I guess, not same day. So that's all exciting. But figuring out the logistics there. So please rate, review, and subscribe. Also, check out all the links in the description below. That's all I'll say for that, because I'm plugging next week too hard. I'm not going to eat up too much of your time with the bullshit, ladies and gentlemen, as we have lots to discuss. So, to tie that all in with the weird schedule thing, there was no episode last week because ya boy usually records on a Monday, maybe a Sunday, rarely a Saturday. Wasn't there for any of those days. I was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, for the Chicago Bears Monday Night Football game. So we're going to do a little recap of that whole situation. And that's that, then we'll see where it goes. But that is why there was no episode last week. And because of Christmas Eve, that's why this one's out today. So now we're all caught up with all that. You may ask, why would you want to go do all that work for such a terrible football team that you're on here yelling and crying about? Well, number one, love is unconditional, or it should be. And even though I'm in a toxic relationship, that's what it is. They abuse me week in, week out, year in, year out. And they do it to their players, and at least those guys get paid. I give them money for them to hurt me. It's just terrible. Let's just get into it first, honestly, because I'm already worried that they're just going to squander this. This has been an embarrassment of a season from an organizational standpoint. And it does seem like they're finally under a lot of national pressure for once. The weird thing about the Chicago Bears is that, they operate like they're this small, family-run business, which is absurd, number one. But they're kind of treated that way, it seems, by every major media outlet. It doesn't matter if it's ESPN or not. FS1 hired that guy, Parkins or whatever, from Chicago, so he's talking about the Bears a lot. But it basically took us getting Caleb Williams for us to actually be truly in any type of conversation. I've always felt like even when I listen to Bill Simmons or somebody, it's just quick afterthought. Didn't really pay attention, don't care. And that's fine. There's nothing to pay attention to currently. But you pretty much always notice that takes are just completely ignorant. Like, it's just like, oh, I saw a clip and I came up with a thing and now I'm saying it on TV. And since everybody but Bears fans is also paying that much attention to the Bears, it just seems like all of the narratives are always incorrect and just all over the place. But now there is just a spotlight on, like, what the fuck are these people doing? I mean, like, why wouldn't, like, now we're going to do the full reset and we're going to do new coach, new GM and whatever. And it's like, we could have just done this last year, new coach at least. But here's the thing. Here's why this could all potentially, but it's going to be the same thing over and over again. It's just going to be the same thing over and over again. But Ryan Poles at this point should be fired. I mean, what are we talking about here is the long thing that I'm trying to get to. Is that realistically, going into this year, we all thought all we need to do is replace the coach and it'll all be good. Ryan Poles is not good at his job. I've completely flipped and maybe that's just another narrative they're trying to push. Like, oh, and now the next guy will be the right guy. It is always like that. But he just hasn't done a good job. I mean, this team sucks. They are worse than last season. You had to fire the offensive coordinator and the coach, and then you make the mistake of promoting the wrong guy and then further sputtering any momentum we had with the interim offensive coordinator. I mean, everything about it. And the coach did need to be fired. He shouldn't have been going into the season. And if it's a control problem, hey, then, like I said, it'll just never get better to where, like, the GM truly didn't have a say. I don't know. I don't know what to believe, and that's a problem. But he's just not. I mean, this team sucks ass. They're terrible at everything. They're not good at anything. I never liked Tremaine Edmonds. I've been critical of certain things the whole time, but now, I mean, what is there to show for it? This team is not good. I mean, that's really all there is to say. So I don't know. I'm in full negative, skeptical mode. I'm sure it'll all turn around, and I'll be super into whatever decisions they make going forward. But just completely out. And so, anyway, looping it all back in. Why would I go do this? That, I just kind of convinced myself that it is a bad idea. Anyway, bought the tickets when the team was like 1-1. We didn't know. When they were 4-2, I was like, oh man, this is a great decision. And then the Vikings kept doing well, and that game sold out, and I was like, oh, this is a steal. Number 3, Bears tickets are, they raised the prices to where a base ticket in the worst seats at a shitty stadium, Soldier Field, are $130 before taxes and fees. The Vikings tickets were like $90 or something. They came out to like $100 total. It's also at an indoor stadium with a better view. Everything about it is better. Number 2, or whatever number I'm on, I don't even fucking know. What's the difference? Bears tickets are also unattainable. Because every dumb fuck like me will go no matter what. And so, okay, road game in December. I get a little trip out of it. And games indoors. Better everything. Right? Instead of the brutal trek to Soldier Field, you walk 3 miles total to go from the L to the stadium and back to the L. And you're just miserable, and you just go home miserable. So it's like, I might as well get a vacation. I might as well not have to sit outside in the middle of the winter. Not that I needed to go see the Vikings, I guess, you could try to get a home game in the first, 6 weeks of the year, and maybe it'll be all right. But the stadium is just truly terrible. It's a terrible experience. So me and my lady, Britt, friend of the show, would only appear once, though. You got to go all the way back to the Green Bay episodes. You've been to Green Bay and Minnesota, and it is from the Detroit area, so has been inside of Ford Field. So technically, and we went to the Bears Family Day. She has been to every NFC North stadium in a short period of time. Pretty impressive. Oh, we did go into Ford Field for the draft also. Interesting. Wow. Weirdly, I've been to every stadium, but I've only seen a football game at 2 of them. Anywho. So, and I mean literally, like, we netted paying like $150 extra to get a weekend trip. Shout out Amtrak. You got to spend 7 hours. Listen, my advice to anybody who, when I tell them, oh, the Amtrak's $80 round trip. Yeah, but how long does it take? Focus on the $80 part. Like, you're going to spend $300 on flights to sit, because you save a little time. They're called edibles, ladies and gentlemen. Makes everything so much easier. So anyway, naturally, right before the train has to leave, little Brit, 102-degree fever. Maybe it wasn't that high, but it was high. So she's zoned out with the fever. I'm zoned out on edibles. We get there no problem, frankly. 7-hour trip, Amtrak, boom. Chicago, Minneapolis, we're there. Now, because they have the whole Twin City scenario over there, the train station's actually in St. Paul, Minnesota. Now, I strictly have a negative opinion of St. Paul, Minnesota, based on what happened when we arrived at this place. St. Paul, Minnesota. It looks like this quaint little, it looks like a sound stage. It looks like fucking Hill Valley, 1955. It's got these quaint little street lights, nice little downtown roads. Everything's this like, old little brick building. It literally looks like a scene from the past. Road to Perdition. Filmed in St. Charles, I believe. And you're like, oh, what a quaint little town. And you think, oh, Minnesota. Everybody's friendly little Minnesota guy. Not the case. First of all, we arrive, it's completely dead there. And then when we leave, it's completely dead there. So I have no way how to perceive this place. I was in St. Paul for a total of like 45 minutes that I'm going to explain to you here. So we finally arrive. It's nighttime. It's 7 o'clock, pitch black. There's a nice little Kindle Mart at the St. Paul train station. So you go, oh, that's nice. Nice little thing going on there. You look on the map, there's a little farmer's market. But, you're still thinking, oh, St. Paul, Minnesota, the capital's here. What could possibly be going on here? It's got to be the most boring white people city of all time. We get on. So they have 2, I guess you call them train line. I don't really know what to call them because they're technically not streetcars. All these weird designations for public transit that people have. They're above ground electric trains that go on the street. But for some reason that's not a streetcar. Whatever. It doesn't matter. One of them is the St. Paul train station that goes all the way to Target Field downtown. We are staying directly across the street from Target Field, the baseball stadium, not the football stadium. So we got to go from one end to the other. We get on this green line, and there is... Well, first of all, we stand on the side of the platform that we're supposed to be standing on, the departure side. And then the train coming from the other direction arrives and then just stays there. And it never does anything to come to the proper side. And then it just gets there and then it starts going backwards in the other direction. And we're standing in the cold for another 15 minutes until another one comes. Bad sign. And who knows, maybe if we get onto that one, everything is fine and normal. However, we get on this second one and all of these lunatics start pouring in. And keep in mind here, from the Chicago area, I've been taking the L since I was 5 years old, roughly. Whatever. Maybe 7 was the first time I was on there. Couldn't tell you. I've been on the blue line at 3 a.m. with 300-pound schizophrenics doing fucking karate moves in the corner. I've seen guys fucking, do all kinds of crazy things. You see guys smoking weed, screaming, smoking cigs, fucking. I've never seen anybody smoke crack, but I've seen crack pipes. Like, you know what I mean? You see things, people yell, whatever. It happens. There's crazies on the train, and it sucks when you're alone with them super late at night. This is 7 p.m. on a Saturday. Okay? This rivals the red line at its worst. Like, if it's 3 a.m. on the blue line and there's like 4 crazies per car, imagine they all decided we're going to go to one car and hang out. This is my experience on there. We got one far end of the car we're in is like a dozen, just like kids just being loud and crazy, playing music. They're screaming at each other. Maybe they're fighting, whatever. You know, you can deal with that. They're kids. What's the big deal? They're annoying, but you're not going to stop a group of kids. Then a ragtag group of bums coming out of all shapes, sizes, races, whatever. And they're, I can't even put it into words. It's like this gang of misfit homeless people. And they all they're like eating food that they probably got out of the garbage. They all stink. They're all dirty. They keep eyeing me. And basically, I just have to be on alert the whole time. There's no threat in any way, but everybody just looks disfigured or homeless or whatever. And people are wandering back and forth. And you can't tell who's conscious and who is all the way put together. And then there's never just a moment where people are just sitting down in silence. It's just, I can't even describe it well. It's like people are bartering. There's something going on where somebody took money for a charger or from somebody. And then this lady comes across the train. She's confronting this group of people. They're talking about getting out at all these stops. I'm watching a guy go whisper into another guy's ear. And then they both look at me directly in the eye. And it's like, what are we doing, guys? There's some other guy with a ski mask on who just keeps jerking his head left and right, like looking out the windows. And it's like, what is that guy's deal? I don't know. Some kid gets on with a full shopping cart full of groceries, and that's fine, whatever. But then he's like loudspeaker and screaming, talking to people while he's on the phone. It's just pure chaos. And it's me and Britt, and we're on Skid Row on wheels. You would think that like the train was a shelter or something. And then 15, 20 minutes in, this is like a 50-minute ride we have to go on. Nobody's getting off this train. We finally get across the Mississippi into Minneapolis. All of a sudden, 2 cops get on. I'm like, oh boy, are we going to witness a giant conflict? They get on, they're like, yeah, we heard there was some kids smoking dope on there. Here's the thing. There was a lot of chaos on this train. Technically, no crimes were being committed. Nobody was smoking on there. I don't know where they're getting this information. All of a sudden, they're on there. So you think they're just getting on there, they're checking, oh, everything's fine. No, the doors close, and they're just riding the subway, which is odd because I saw no cops on foot the whole time we were there after the fact. So it's like, how did these guys get here in the first place? And now they're just riding the train somewhere. I don't know the situation. They start arguing with some of the kid in the ski mask, the kid with the shopping cart, and then just some random guy. They just start arguing with the cops basically about how, of course, it's 2 white cops. One guy wants nothing to do with it, but the other one just is persistently arguing about like police statistics and how like most of the time cops don't murder black people. And they're just like, yeah, man, well, that's not really how that works. But then every argument that either side, it's just nonsense. They're not getting anywhere. They're all just talking in circles, and then it gets a little more heated. And I'm like, am I about to witness like an incident now on top of this? And luckily, no, it got nowhere, and then the cops left. And I'm like, oh, great. This has been fun. And then we go for 20 more minutes. Pretty much everybody clears out. Another crazy guy gets on, though. And then he just starts wandering up and down the train and then, like, doing dance moves. And then he's like, I'm a worm. And then he, like, did a thing and then just, like, stared at us. And my point really is just, it was all way too much. Like, what is going on? 7 o'clock on a Saturday. And almost nobody, like, there was, like, 2 other people that got on that seemingly were normal. Listen, if I sound uptight here, it's worse than what I'm describing, is all I'm saying. It was in the air to just, like, hey, pay attention to what's going on. And remember this. We'll come back to this later for when we're leaving. Anyway, we get to Minnesota. Once we finally get to the room, nice spot. One of these, like, converted apartment hotel type things, full kitchen, all the works, washing machine, great stuff. Another Kindle Mart right behind the building. Go check that out. A bunch of good stuff. So, we eat good food, walk around. Nothing too crazy going on in Minnesota otherwise. You go to the Mall of America, take the other train. Same thing, all the way to the last stop. No issues. So all that stuff's gravy. Just walked around the city. A very non-special city, I would say. Nothing really too notable about it at all. Nothing distinct. Architecture's boring, but fine. Nobody's out. And it wasn't even that cold. I mean, for Minnesota especially, it was like 35 degrees. Nobody's out. You walk into places, however, and they're usually full. So it's like, okay, at least this isn't like a ghost town like Boston was. Couldn't believe that. Still not happy about that. But, I mean, that was really it. Go, you get a Juicy Lucy. That was awesome. Shout out Matt's. That place ruled. Other than that, though, I mean, just kind of just a nondescript Anytown, USA type thing. It reminded me kind of St. Louis, weirdly. Maybe that's some kind of Mississippi River connection that I'm putting together there. But a lot of parking garages and a lot of buildings with, like, those, like, connector pathway things above the street, whatever that would be called. Makes sense in Minnesota. It's way fucking colder. Whatever. So we're right across from Target Field. U.S. Bank Stadium's like across downtown. Take the train there. And it's great. The stadium is unbelievable. I've never been in it's the nicest stadium I've ever been in, I would say. View-wise, impeccable. We're in the last row. On the end, so there's a wall behind me, there's a partition to my right, and there's stairs in front of me. So I got nobody in front of me, nobody on my right, I got Brett on my left. Great. Had a nice little place to put my stuff, could stand freely when I needed to. And then the Bears, laid a fucking egg and played like complete dog shit. It was terrible. We left with like 5 minutes left. I'm sure you all saw what happened there. So it's, it sucked. And then I see people like still having predictions that like it'll be a shootout versus the Lions. Like the Lions could play no defenders, and we wouldn't be able to keep up with them. I just don't see how that's going to go well. The team's gone completely backwards. So, yeah, promoting the guy who was the passing game coordinator 6 weeks ago is such a fucking stupid decision. But the stadium was great. Their fans were great. What can you say? Just got absolutely fucking smoked. And they weren't even playing that well, like the Vikings. Sam Darnold was off the whole game. But we just had nothing. You can show me the one screenshot of Rome running over the middle all you want. Like, yeah, that looks really bad. It always looks really bad when you still capture it too, but Caleb just gets no chance. And then, like, the fact that we're going to act like he's not playing well, I mean, yeah, maybe 15 of the, let's say 20 of the sacks are his fault. Still been sacked 50 fucking times. Like, it doesn't matter. the offensive line is just so bad. They can't seem to stick to anything that works, and it was just a disaster to watch. But the stadium was great. Can say that. So next morning, we get up to leave, and we're like, "Fuck it." It's Tuesday morning. 10 in the morning, whatever it is. Got to catch the train at like noon. We should be able to take the Green Line back to St. Paul, right? No. We cross the street to go to Target Field. Not even. We're about to cross the street to go to Target Field. This dude is walking around like a gorilla. Like literally like lurking. And he's like, and he's just looking around, and then he sees a guy who's walking, I don't know, 20 feet in front of us. And he just starts sprinting at this guy. And I'm like, is he going to tackle him? Is he going to just punch him in the face? Like, what's going on? He runs up to him, does like the Michael Jackson when he puts his hand on his head and then stands on his tippy toes thing. He does that within like 3 inches of this guy. The guy doesn't react at all and just keeps walking. I don't know if he just like didn't know, maybe he had headphones in or was that good and used to dealing with the Minnesota crazies. The guy just does the Michael Jackson thing and then turns around and goes back and starts lurking on the train platform again some more. And so we're like, fuck it, let's walk over to the platform. And then we just see him just constantly lurking around. And then some more guys start wandering up. There's a lot of, also a thing I noticed, a lot of the crazies in Minnesota, they're rocking like high-vis jackets. So you think, oh, there's a lot of like workers on the tracks right now. And it's like, no, they're just guys with nothing in their eyes, just roaming in circles. And it's like, okay. So more guys come up. The guy keeps lurking around, keeps coming kind of by us. And we're like, you know what? I think we learned our lesson on the way here. We're not taking the Green Line anywhere. Catch an Uber, get back, whatever. And then, we're in downtown St. Paul again. There's nobody around. Seems like everything's fine. It seems like just this train is a mess. So long story short, if you go to Minnesota, don't take the Green Line under any circumstances. Because it doesn't seem like it goes well, ever. And hey, maybe I just had the worst possible experience ever, and this is odd. But it was like, what the fuck, man? Like, I could deal with the crazies, but not when I'm outnumbered 50-1. Then I would say it's a little out of control here. But yeah, fine. A fine, regular place. I wouldn't be dying to go back. Not like, oh, I can't. I'm worried about what I missed. It's like, not really. Missed maybe a couple things on the list. What can you do? Would definitely go back for a game, though, I guess. Just because that stadium is so nice. But yeah, so that was our little Sports Corner travel edition. Speaking of Sports Corner, I'm a week behind on my preseason pick recap. So for week 15, I went 11-5. So on week 18, I'm going to compile every week individually and then total it all up for the year. And we'll go over the standing comparison and do all that stuff at the end of the year. I'll probably do, I haven't done an edibles episode since the preseason picks, so that's the plan there. And that'll be fun. Honestly, the record is surprisingly really good. Like, realistically, it wasn't that hard to pick every game for the whole year because mostly things kind of panned out. Like, I was worried that I had the Eagles with too good of a record. That's pretty much what it is. I technically, fucked up by having the Cowboys have a good record. I don't know. Hindsight's 20/20 there. The Bears I gave a good record to, and the Vikings a bad one. So I think in the final standings, it's going to look really bad. Like my division predictions, but overall win-loss, I'm going to be way over 500, which is pretty impressive, I got to say. I got to toot my own horn here, beep, beep. And, yeah. So next week, we'll see how we did. Let's see. What's it looking like so far for a week 16? Oh, I got some bad ones. I picked the Browns. That's not good. Went 1-1 so far on the Saturday games. Picked the Steelers. Not a good idea. Oh boy. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. This actually doesn't look too bad overall. Oh, I picked the Panthers? What was I thinking? All right. The NFL season. God, I hate the fucking Bears so fucking much. I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. Poor Caleb Williams, man. That's why, like, can we just... Like, if a new GM is what it takes for us to just throw money at good offensive linemen in free agency and then draft... the fact that I'm seeing these mock drafts that are like, well, we're not putting a lineman here because we expect them to do it in free agency. They need to do both. They need to sign 2 really expensive guys in free agency. They need to draft a guy in the first round and the second round on top of that. Why are we leaving anything up to chance, man? Just load up on the O-line. Everybody else is under contract. Caleb's good. Rome is good. DJ's good. Cole's good. If Keenan's got to go, whatever. The team is terrible. Like, what do we need to hold on to anything for? So, it's just so sad. Anyway, one last thing to wrap up on here real quick. Last night I saw The Lord of the Rings, The War of Rohirrim, or however the fuck you say that. This is like an anime-style, animated Lord of the Rings story. It's from like the appendices of the original book or something, and then they still kind of like took their own creative liberties with it, I guess. And this movie was essentially like greenlit and fast-tracked, basically just so, who is it? Warner Brothers or New Line? New Line, I think. It was made just so they can retain the rights. Like, you have to make something every however many years or something in order to keep them. I don't know what the exact deal is there. This movie was awesome. Now, it wasn't like as engrossing story-wise. No, it was a little more thin. It's kind of just the story of like how this specific kingdom went to war, like the events leading up to it, and then it happening, and the changing of a guard in this kingdom and all that type of stuff. While still also kind of being a precursor story to The Ring in like a, in a subtle background way. Brian Cox is the star as the king, Helm Hammerhand, which is a fucking sick name. And he's basically just like Thor. Is pretty much how that works. And he like kills this guy accidentally who was threatening him. And then his son like vows vengeance, and it leads to basically a war on his kingdom. And it's great. They tried to base the visuals and animation style. Like, it's an anime style, but they tried to base the general visual style on the Peter Jackson trilogy. And I think they did a pretty damn good job. Popped a little edible before this one as well. Shout out edibles. And just getting engrossed in all the scenery and everything. Like, it's a beautiful movie. And yeah, it's a little long. It's like 2:20, I think. We could have shaved 15 minutes off somewhere here or there. But it's essentially about how the king's daughter has to like come to her own and like step up and, do her thing. It's more of a story about her, kind of coming of age and learning leadership and whatever through the struggles of war and her father or whatever. It's a shame to me that this isn't being marketed bigger. You would think that like anything Lord of the Rings would just like they'd hammer it knowing that people show up. Maybe because it's animated, people think less of it. I like the original animated Lord of the Rings from like the 70s, but that only tells like half of the book story. I think they were hoping to make a second one when they made that, but whatever. I don't know. I just feel like people should see this. If you like the Lord of the Rings, which I'm not this big like fantasy guy. Anything fantasy, I'm not just like automatically into it, but I like Lord of the Rings, and this is a really good movie. That's at the very least, like, just look at it. It's not this thing. I feel like people get hung up on the fact that like, oh, there's so much lore and all these words and all these terms. It's like they don't really matter. You know, like you don't need to be the guy who knows like who the king was in this town, like of this kingdom at this place in this location. You don't need to know the geography. Just be like, oh, that guy's the king. They're trying to kill him. They're going to war. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's easier to soak in if you don't get wrapped up in just all the crazy names of things. I feel like that alone is what holds a lot of people back. There's nothing that's that different about these stories. The fantasy element just kind of makes it crazier, you know, like they end up getting saved by a giant eagle and it's sick. And there's like these giant like elephant mammoth things, and they fucking lure one that's chasing them down to get fed or to get eaten by this fucking like giant octopus thing. Like it's just awesome. All the shit that happens is awesome. So go see this. I mean, I think this is probably going to end up being huge on streaming when it eventually gets there. But I don't know. I don't see the negative of this being animated. And I feel like why not use animation for things like this? You don't have to spend $500 million on these sprawling productions just to have a shit movie. Like just spending the money doesn't get you there. Like I've always said, I would love like a single season Seinfeld reboot where they do like modern Seinfeld, like all those Instagram and Twitter accounts, but they just do it animated, and then it doesn't matter that everybody's older and all that type of shit. And you bring the same writing team. It was the premise of Star Trek, the animated series. And it was, you know, people say what they want to say about that show, but I think that show's really good. It's just as well written as the original, and they pack it into less time, so it technically is a lot faster paced. Of course, the animation's low quality. They had no budget, just like the show itself, so I don't see why that's a hindrance. Anyway, for things like Lord of the Rings, for things like Star Wars, you can make lower stakes movies like this and their little side stories. But when you make the little side story the $400 million tentpole thing, that's why they suck. And that's why Solo's such a big disaster. As an example, Kraven the Hunter came out at this exact same time and is a fucking bomb and a disaster. And I don't know how that's even a Spider-Man spinoff. I don't know what the fuck that is. So it's like, why not make that animated or something like that? I don't know. My point is just the fact that it's mixed with the anime style too, maybe that's throwing people off, but it's not like this is like a Japanese movie that's being dubbed. That's just the animation style. There's a Japanese director. But this movie's awesome. And Brian Cox was awesome. Now, is this a 10 out of 10? No. Would I rather watch this than the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit movies? Like, no. But maybe in a certain situation, I would. I don't know. But it just makes a lot of sense. Like, even if you think about it, like, there's, like, Miyazaki movies that are technically, like, a similar... All these mountainous war villages, you know... Howl's Moving Castle type shit. It fits this world better than you would think, is I guess my point. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just disappointed that it's not marketed more. And there was a decent amount of people in my theater, maybe 20, but it's like it's opening weekend, is it not? Or no, it came out last week technically. Still though. Go see the Lord of the Rings movie. Come on, guys. We want more stuff like this, where it's still, like, well thought out. Still well made. doesn't, I don't know. It's like, meanwhile, people are going to line up to see fucking Mufasa. It just makes no sense to me. What is there to gain from that movie? Nothing. The Lion King sucked. It made a fuck ton of money and still everybody hated it. So it's like, can't wait for the next one, even though I didn't like the first one. It's just nonsense. It's just nonsense. This is the type of IP that works. It's a smart, calculated thing that's well made on a reasonable budget, but they're letting people just forget about it. And I don't know. Why not spend less money on the movie and then push it more and then just make a bigger profit? I don't know. And the critical reviews of this, I don't agree with. It's got a low percentage on everything. Let's see. 46% on Tomatoes, 5.6 out of 10. Animated deep cut from Lord of the Rings mythos has plenty of spectacle, but its cliched characters and uneven animation. It is a little uneven. There's certain things where, like, the background looks great, but then something animates into it, like a character walks into the scene or something, and they look like they're in a bit of a contrasting style. But it's not enough that it's like a hindrance to the whole movie, because overall it's gorgeous. So I disagree with that. I also disagree with cliched characters. I mean, what do you want? They're just like every other character in all the Lord of the Rings movies. Honor, power, whatever. Like, it's all pretty basic stuff. Are we going to act like fucking Frodo and Sam are these like deep well of literary genius? Like, again, you know, I'm not trying to like diss Lord of the Rings in that regard. I'm saying I like it, but I mean, these are just like every character in every fantasy movie. And it's based on a book. Like, what do you want them to do? So I don't know. People are being too hard on it. I say go see it. All right. I think that's going to wrap up this week. We will see what happens for next week. As I mentioned, we'll be doing Nosferatu and A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan movie. I'm going to try to get it out at least a day early on Monday. We'll see. Worst case scenario, it's dropping New Year's Eve, and you'll have the new year to listen to it. Just didn't want this one to come out on Christmas Eve because, I mean, who's listening to a podcast? Probably me, but you know what I'm saying. I'm looking out for my tens of fans out there, so thank you for listening. I appreciate you. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. Nobody celebrates Kwanzaa. Why are we still putting that on the calendar? Nobody even talks about Kwanzaa. When I was a kid, there was all these jokes about Kwanzaa all the time. Now we don't even pretend that it's like a thing anybody does. Anyway, enjoy it all. Happy Festivus tomorrow, the real holiday. I got my pole nice and lit up. Looks great. And then, I'll be telling you Happy New Year the next time I talk to you. So please rate, review, and subscribe to Requiem for Tuesday. We're available everywhere. Check out all the links in the description below. There's music. There's merch. There's this podcast. Those are in the links. I think that's probably it. But that's plenty of stuff for everybody to enjoy. So, yeah. Happy holidays. Again. And I'll talk to you next week. Oh, one last thing before I forget. Shout out Notre Dame. College football playoff victory. My guys, they probably won't win next week, but just wanted to add that in there. Go Irish. And that was the only extra thing. Hopefully the Bears win. I'm recording this Sunday morning, and they probably won't. And next week's Sports Corner will be yet another sad, miserable recap. All right. I'm getting out of here. Adam Pecora signing off of Requiem for a Tuesday. And remember, I are fat. You are fat. We are RFAT. That was my Vince McMahon. Calculator.